They say you never forget your first love. But what if that love began long before you realized it? What if it grew out of childhood friendships, shared secrets, and summers spent together? I often think about this, looking at Martin in the college halls. So far away now, so different. We met when I was 7, and he was 8. Our families lived next door, and it seemed natural that we would become best friends. Martin was only a year older, but it seemed like a massive difference at the time. He always knew a little more and could do a little better, and I looked up to him with admiration. Summer camp was our special place. We went there for 3 years, shared a tent, and made up secret signs and codes. I remember one night we snuck out to the lake when everyone was asleep. "Edward," Martin whispered, looking at the stars, "let's swear we'll always be best friends." We linked our little fingers and vowed to be friends for the rest of our lives. Martin always had crazy ideas, and I was the one who thought out the details of their implementation. When he decided to build a treehouse, I calculated the right angle for the planks. When he wanted to organize a secret club, I devised a system of passwords and symbols. In middle school, we were still inseparable. Martin protected me from bullies, and I helped him with math. We spent evenings playing video games in his room, sharing our deepest secrets and dreaming about the future. "We're going to the same college," he said. "It's going to be cool, you'll see." We really did get into the same college, but everything turned out completely different from what we imagined. The changes began quietly. First, Martin started to skip our traditional weekend movie marathons, soccer practice, new friends, and parties. Then, our conversations became shorter and more superficial. And then, we stopped talking altogether, except for the occasional hello in the hallways. I watched him change, from being my best friend to the star of his college days, a charismatic athlete, a girl's favorite, and the life of the party. His smile still lit up the room, but now it was rarely directed at me. Sitting in the library sometimes, I would hear him laughing from the hallway. Or I would see him walking across campus, surrounded by his friends. At such moments, I felt the emptiness where our friendship had once been. There were moments when I thought I saw his glance, quick, furtive, as if he was remembering too. But maybe that was just my imagination, the desire to believe that our friendship meant something to him too. I often think about that summer at camp, our vow, and the stars over the lake. How would our lives have changed if I had confessed to friendship and other feelings that were beginning to emerge? But the past cannot be brought back. Martin lives his life, bright and noisy, with people and events. And I live mine, quiet, orderly, with books instead of friends. And yet sometimes, when I accidentally catch his eye in the hallway, I see an echo of the boy who was my best friend, the one who knew all my secrets, shared all my adventures with me, and promised eternal friendship under the starry sky. College changed everything. I often think about this as I sit in the back corner of the library, watching Martin walk past the windows with his usual entourage of admirers. He became something of a local celebrity, captain of the football team, the life of the party, the bad boy every girl wanted. His popularity seems almost magical. Everyone admires his courage even when he gets into trouble, and that happens often. Last week, he threw an illegal party in the gym. Anyone else would have been expelled, but Martin got off with a light reprimand and a charming smile. He's simply irresistible, the girls at the following table in the library sigh, unaware I can hear every word. Have you seen how he smiles? Oh yes, I have seen it. I know that smile by heart, all its shades and meanings. I know what it looks like when he is pleased, not just playing a role, or at least I used to. My life is the complete opposite of his. I spend my days in the library, immersed in textbooks and research. Professors praise my work, but who cares about academic success when a star like Martin shines next to me? "Hey, nerd!" his new friends sometimes shout as they pass. Martin never joins in the taunts, but he doesn't stop them either. He walks past as if he doesn't notice me, as if we were never best friends. At times like these, I remember how he once protected me from bullies at school, "No one dares to hurt my best friend," he said. Now everything has changed. Sometimes our paths cross in class. We both took literature as an optional subject, the only thing we have in common. He sits in the back row, often late, but his answers are surprisingly insightful when he does decide to join in. In those moments, I see glimpses of the Martin I used to know. "Mr. Harris," the professor says, "your analysis of The Great Gatsby is most insightful. It's a pity you come to class so rarely." Martin grins, running a hand through his perfectly tousled hair, a gesture I remember from childhood. Only now, like everything he does, it's for the audience, and I sit in the front row, carefully writing down every word the professor says, and stealthily watch him in the window's reflection. Sometimes, I seem to catch his gaze, thoughtful, almost melancholy, but the moment passes, and he laughs again at someone's joke and plays his role again. In the dining room, he is always the center of attention. I eat alone, usually with a book, occasionally glancing at his table. He is always surrounded by people, beautiful, popular, loud, and as bright as he is. "I heard Martin's having a party this weekend," comes the snatches of conversation. "They say it's going to be something special." Before, I was the first to know about all the critical events in his life. Now, from rumors and gossip like everyone else. In the evenings, I sometimes see him from my dorm room window. He often sits on a bench in the yard, sometimes alone, rare moments when the mask falls. At such moments, he seems almost the same, nearly reachable. But then his friends show up, and another fan or the team calls me to practice, and the moment is gone, leaving me alone with memories and unfulfilled hopes. I've considered why letting go of these feelings is so hard. Maybe it's because they're more than friendship or love. It could be because he was the first person who knew and understood me. Or maybe because sometimes, in the rare moments when our eyes do meet, I see in his eyes a reflection of the same longing, the same loneliness that I feel myself. But these moments are becoming less frequent, and the distance between us is growing. I am learning to live with this and find meaning in other things, studying books and small victories over myself. Sometimes, especially at night, I still dream that one day everything will change, that we will talk again, laugh, and share secrets. The day was ordinary: lectures, library, homework. Nothing foreshadowed changes. I returned to the hostel late in the evening, loaded with books and tiredness. The elevator in our building was old and capricious, but I didn't want to walk up to the 7th floor. The doors opened, and I froze. Martin was standing inside, staring at his phone. For a second, I hesitated. Should I wait for the next one? But he looked up, and it was too late to back out. "Hello," I muttered as I stepped inside. "Hi," he nodded, looking back at his phone. I pressed the button for my floor, although it was already illuminated. Apparently, we both needed to go to the 7th. The elevator slowly crawled upward, filled with awkward silence. A strange grinding noise was heard somewhere between the 4th and 5th floors. The cabin jerked and froze. The light flickered, but, fortunately, did not go out. "Damn!" Martin looked up from his phone. "That's all I need." I pressed the call button. Nothing. Martin tried to call. No signal. "Typical luck of ours," he muttered, and I couldn't help but smile. The hours sounded like an echo of the past. We sat down on the floor. Standing was tiring, and it seemed we had a long wait ahead. The silence became increasingly heavy. "How was your latest literature project?" Martin asked unexpectedly. "Did you notice?" "Of course. Your analysis of Wuthering Heights was impressive." I looked at him in surprise. Did he really listen to my report? "Why did you miss your presentation?" "Oh, that," he chuckled. "The party lasted too long the night before." As usual, I couldn't help but let the slight bitterness in my voice. "What does it mean?" "Nothing. It's just, you've changed. And you're not." He looked at me carefully, still as serious. "At least I'm true to myself. And I then am not?" The conversation was starting to get heated. All the unspoken grievances, all the missed opportunities to talk, all of it was suddenly locked in the tiny elevator cabin with us. "You know," I began, I often think about that summer at camp, about our oath. He was silent, but I saw his fingers tremble. We promised to always be friends. What happened, Martin? Life happened, he said, running his hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that made his heart ache. People change. Not like that, not completely. What are you talking about? That sometimes I still see the old you. When you answer at seminars, when you sit alone in the yard, when you think no one is watching. He turned to me abruptly. Do you watch often? I felt myself blushing. I just notice sometimes. You know, his voice grew quieter. I notice you too, in the library, at lectures, everywhere. My heart skipped a beat. What does he mean? Why do you never come over? And why are you... We looked at each other in the dim light of the emergency lamp. The whole world seemed to shrink to the size of this cabin, to the space between us. I miss you. The words escaped before I could stop them. He was silent for a long time, and I began to regret my frankness. But then, I miss you too. His voice was barely audible. More than you think. The air in the cabin seemed to thicken. We were sitting so close that I could feel the warmth of his body and see every eyelash and feature of his painfully familiar face. Martin, I began but didn't have time to finish. The elevator suddenly jerked and began to move slowly. It looks like we're being rescued, he said without looking away. The elevator continued to move slowly, but something changed in the air between us. It was as if an invisible wall that had separated us for years was beginning to crack. You know, my voice was hoarse, I have to tell you something while we're still here, before everything returns to how it was. Martin looked at me without stopping, and there was something new in his gaze, simultaneously frightening and enticing. Remember that last night at camp, when we were sitting by the lake? Of course we took an oath. Yes, but there was something else, something I didn't dare say then. The elevator jerked again and stopped. Somewhere above, the muffled voices of rescuers could be heard. What? Martin asked quietly. I was in love with you, even then. And then at school. And now? The words hung in the air. I didn't dare look up, expecting laughter, disgust, anything. But that is not what happened. A warm hand touched my chin, forcing me to look up. Martin was so close I could see the golden flecks in his brown eyes. You're an idiot, he whispered. We're both idiots. And he kissed me. It was like jumping off a cliff, like the first breath of air after being underwater for so long. All the years of loneliness, all the unspoken words, all the suppressed feelings, everything merged in that moment. This romantic moment could not just end like that. Everything only filled the situation, especially when he took my instrument in his hands and began to actively work with it, after which we had sex. We only broke away from each other when we heard loud voices overhead. The rescuers were almost there. What now? I asked, trying to catch my breath. Now, Martin smiled, straightening my disheveled shirt. We'll make up for lost time. The elevator doors began to slide open slowly. We quickly stood up, trying to make ourselves look presentable. Are you okay? Asked one of the rescuers. Yes, Martin replied, and I heard a smile in his voice. Better than ever. We exited the elevator under the curious gaze of the assembled spectators. No one, of course, guessed what had happened in the stuck cabin during those half an hour. My room is 3 doors down, Martin said quietly as we walked away from the crowd. Will you come in? I nodded, not trusting my voice. We didn't speak on the way to his room. Words weren't necessary. Everything that needed to be said had already been said in that elevator. Now, it was time for something else. Martin opened the door, ushering me in. His room was exactly as I had imagined it. Sports trophies on the shelves, posters on the walls, and a slight clutter that suggested it was actually lived in. But that wasn't what interested me. On his nightstand was a photograph, old and tattered. The two of us at summer camp smiling, our hands tied together by the same scarf from our vows. Have you kept it all this time? Of course, he came up behind me, putting his arm around my shoulders. How could I throw it away? I turned to face him, feeling my heart about to jump out of my chest. We've wasted so much time, then we'll have to make up for it. He kissed me again, and this time there was no one to interrupt us. Martin's room seemed like another world, a separate universe where only the two of us existed. The old photograph on the nightstand blessed what was happening now, linking the past with the present. "I can't believe you've been—" I started, but Martin cut me off with a kiss. "Enough talking," he whispered. "We've wasted too much time on words already." His hands slid down my back, and all thoughts flew out of my head. It was like a dream, one of those that haunted me during long nights in the dorm. Only now, it was real. The light from the street lamp came through the window, casting strange shadows on the walls. Somewhere in the distance, the voices of late students returning from parties could be heard, but in this room, time seemed to stand still. "You know," Martin said, pulling away for a moment, "I've always noticed how you looked at me, even when I pretended not to see. Why didn't you ever tell me? And why are you—" We both chuckled intimately. All these years, we had circled around each other, afraid to admit our feelings even to ourselves. "I thought you were too busy with your new life." "A new life," he shook his head. "The worst thing about being popular is that everyone wants to be with you, but no one really wants to know you." His words echoed in the silence of the room. I realized that behind all that confident, carefree guy hid a loneliness just like mine. "I know you," I said quietly. "I've always known you." His gaze softened. "Yes. That's why I couldn't just walk up to you. You see the real me. It's scary." I reached out my hand, touching his face. "You are still the same Martin who swore eternal friendship to me at the lake. And you are still the same Edward who believes in me more than I believe in myself." Our lips met again, but there was no rush this time. We explored each other, relearning what we had once known by heart. His skin smelled of something woody, probably that same expensive cologne his admirers always gave him. But underneath that scent was another, familiar from childhood, dear. His hands shook as he pulled me closer. At that moment, he wasn't a college star or a hotshot athlete. He was just Martin. My Martin. "Stay," he whispered between kisses. "All night." As if I could leave, as if I wanted to go. The bed was narrow, standard dorm furniture, but it didn't bother us. We huddled so close together as if we were trying to make up for all the years of separation in one night. It was just getting light outside when we finally pulled away, breathing heavily. His hair was disheveled, his lips were swollen from kissing, and he had never looked more handsome. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing my gaze. "About how long I've dreamed about this, and about how reality is better than any fantasy." He smiled, that unique smile I hadn't seen since school. Sincere, a little shy, meant only for me. "You know," he said, playing with my fingers, "we could try being together for real." "What about your reputation? Your friends?" "To hell with reputation," he kissed my fingers. "I'm tired of pretending." "You are sure?" "For the first time in a long time, yes, absolutely sure." I saw the same feeling in his eyes that filled me. A mixture of fear and hope, desire and tenderness, past and future. We knew we'd have to face reality in the morning, but now, in this room, in this moment, it was just the two of us. And that was enough. I buried my face in his neck, inhaling his familiar scent. "I love you. Always have." "I know." He hugged me tighter. "I love you too." Morning came too quickly. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, streaking the rumpled sheets. I woke up first and lay there for a few minutes, afraid to move for fear of ruining the moment. Martin was asleep beside me, his arm still wrapped around my waist. It seemed so right and so impossible at the same time. "You're thinking too loudly," Martin muttered without opening his eyes. "Stop it." "Sorry," I smiled. "It's just, it all seems unreal." He finally opened his eyes and looked at me sleepily, tenderly. "It's genuine." But reality was already knocking on the door. Literally. Somewhere in the hallway, the voices of his teammates could be heard. "Marty, you're going to sleep through practice." We both froze. Martin swore under his breath. "Damn, I forgot." "I better go." I started to get up, but he held me back. "Wait a minute, they'll go away." We lay quietly, listening to the footsteps and voices gradually recede. The magic of the night faded, giving way to harsh reality. "We need to talk," Martin finally said, sitting in bed, "about how we're going to handle this." "With us, you mean?" "Yes." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I knew so well. "I can't. We can't just announce it to everyone." I understood. Of course I did. He was a college star and captain of the football team. This kind of news could destroy everything he had built. "I know," I replied quietly. "We can keep it a secret. Do you mind?" "If the alternative is not being with you at all, no, I don't mind." He leaned over and kissed me slowly, gratefully. "We'll figure out how to do it," he said. "We just have to be careful." We began discussing the rules of our secret life. No public displays of affection, no obvious changes in behavior, and only meetings in his room or other safe places. "I have a key to the old lab in the East Wing," I offered. "Nobody goes there after 6. And I know a great spot on the gym roof," he added. "There's a great view of the sunset from there." We mapped out our future secret meetings, and it was like planning an adventure, just like when we were kids and came up with hidden codes and secret hideouts. "You know," Martin said, pulling me close, "maybe it's romantic, like Romeo and Juliet. Hopefully with a less tragic ending," I chuckled. "Definitely less tragic. I'm not going anywhere." His phone rang again, the coach reminding him about training. "I have to go." He stood up reluctantly. "See you tonight?" "In the lab?" "At 7? "At 7, he leaned in for a final kiss. "And Edward?" "Yes?" "Thank you for understanding." I watched him get ready, transforming from my Martin into the public persona the whole college knew. It was strange to see that transformation, knowing there was more underneath the mask. After he left, I lay in his bed for a few more minutes, absorbing his scent on the pillow. Then, I carefully looked out into the hallway and quickly slipped into my room, ensuring no one was there. It would be a long day of pretending that nothing had changed, that we were still just former friends, barely acquainted. But tonight, we would be real again. And maybe this secret will make our meetings even more special. Maybe this is how true love should begin. Not with fanfare and announcements, but with quiet moments alone, secret smiles across the room, and anticipation of the next meeting. Living a double life was more complicated than we thought. During the day, we were strangers, me in the library and him on the football field. Occasionally, we crossed paths in the corridors, exchanging brief nods like old acquaintances, nothing more. But the evenings belonged only to us. "You know," Martin said one day as we sat in our secret spot on the gym's roof, "sometimes I hate this game of hide and seek." He lay his head on my lap, and I ran my fingers through his hair. It was a simple, intimate gesture that would have been impossible in daylight. "Especially when girls try to flirt with me," he continued, "and I have to smile and pretend I'm interested." "At least you don't have to listen to them talk about how hot you are," I chuckled. "Trust me, the library is full of your admirers." He raised himself on his elbow. "Are you jealous?" "Maybe, a little." "No need." He reached out and kissed me. "They only see the mask. You see the real me." At such moments, all the difficulties seemed insignificant. But there were other moments. For example, when his team won an important match, everyone rushed to hug the captain. I stood in the crowd of fans, clenching my fists to be next to him to share his triumph. Or when at a party, some girl practically sat on his lap, he had to play his role, smile, flirt, maintain the image. "I'm sorry," he whispered when we were finally alone. "I hate this. I hate pretending." "I know," I replied, kissing his temples. "Me too." But there were good moments too. Secret notes in textbooks, accidental touches when passing documents, and glances across the classroom full of hidden meaning. We learned to communicate without words, a language of gestures and signs that only we understood. Like in childhood when we had secret codes, everything was more serious now. "Remember how we used to make up codes in camp?" I asked one day as we lay on the floor of the old laboratory, staring at the ceiling. "Of course, only now the stakes are higher." He squeezed my hand. Now, we're not hiding plans to raid the kitchen, but love? Yes, he turned to me. Love. The word still made our hearts beat faster. Maybe because we hadn't been able to say it for so long. We created our own rituals. Every Tuesday and Thursday, meetings in the lab. Friday evenings on the roof of the gym. Sundays in his room when most of the students had gone home. Sometimes I dream about what life might be like for us after college, he said one night. Somewhere far away from here, where no one knows us, where we don't have to pretend. Sounds great. It will happen. He hugged me tighter. I promise. But for now, we live here and now, balancing between the public image and the personal truth, the past and the future. Every day was a test of our love, determination, and ability to keep a secret. But every secret encounter, every stolen kiss, every moment of intimacy made the experience worthwhile. In those moments, we were real. We were ourselves. Spring was always a special time on campus. Trees in bloom, warm evenings, and the air filled with the promise of change. For Martin and me, each evening was a precious gift. You know what I'm thinking? He asked as we sat in our sheltered spot on the roof. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink. About what? About how things could have been different. If I hadn't been such a coward at school, if I had confessed earlier. I turned to him. We were both cowards, but maybe we had to go through all this to get here. He nodded thoughtfully. It's just that sometimes I imagine how we could go to prom together, slow dance without fear of strangers' eyes. We can still dance. I stood and extended my hand to him. Here and now. Without music? We have the sunset and the stars. That's enough. He smiled and took my hand. We moved slowly across the roof, holding each other, creating our own melody from the beating of our hearts. After graduation, he whispered, we could move away, somewhere where no one knows us. Where? Maybe Seattle? Or Portland? Somewhere rainy and cozy where you can start over. At such moments, we often talked about the future, about how we would rent an apartment, wake up together every morning and not have to hide. I could find a job in a law firm, he continued to dream, and you could teach literature, and we would have a dog. Big and kind, and a cat because you always wanted a cat. And a small garden on the balcony, and no secrets, no pretense. These dreams made our secret lives more bearable. They gave us hope, a purpose worth holding on to. But reality always set in too quickly. A phone call, a text from the team, a reminder to train, and the moment's magic was ruined. I have to go, he sighed, looking at the screen. The guys are gathering at the bar, celebrating their victory. If I don't come... I know, I kissed him. Go, see you tomorrow. Our farewells were always a little bittersweet. Every time he went off to his friends, to his public life, I felt a pang of jealousy and longing. But then, some moments made up for everything, like when he came to me in the middle of the night, soaking wet in the rain, just because he missed me. Or when he left a note in my book, a little heart drawn in the margins, where no one but me would see it. Or those rare mornings when we would wake up together, he would look at me like I was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. You know what? He said one day as we lay in his room, listening to the rain outside. Sometimes, all this secrecy only makes us feel stronger. Why? Because every moment together becomes special. Every meeting is like a small miracle. I knew what he meant. Our love was particularly poignant, intense, and born of the need to hide. But one day, he added, kissing my palm, we won't hide. I promise. And I believed him. I believed that all these secret meetings, all these stolen moments, were leading us to something more, to the life we dreamed of on the roof. It was supposed to be a typical evening at the lab. We met there every Tuesday, after everyone had gone home. The building was usually empty after 6, and we did not fear being discovered. You know, Martin said as I settled into his lap, today the coach said I could get an athletic scholarship, pro football and all that. This is great. I turned to him. Isn't it? I don't know. He ran his hand thoughtfully through my hair. That would mean more pretense, more hiding. We didn't hear footsteps in the hallway or notice a shadow under the door. Only when the handle started turning did we realize something was wrong. Martin reacted instantly. He pushed me behind the cabinet with reagents and dove under the table himself. The door opened, and a cleaner entered the lab. My heart was pounding so loudly that I thought it should be heard throughout the building. I held my breath, praying the janitor wouldn't notice anything suspicious. He walked around the lab, humming to himself. He checked the trash cans and wiped down a few tables. Every second seemed like an eternity. Finally, he left, and we were able to emerge from our hiding places. "Shit," Martin breathed, pulling me closer. "That was close." "Too close." I was still shaking. "We need to be careful." We decided to change the meeting place. The lab didn't seem safe anymore. We met in an abandoned part of the library where old journals were kept, where no one ever looked. "You know," Martin said a few days later as we sat among the dusty shelves, "maybe this is a sign." "What sign?" "That we need to be smarter, plan better." He was right. We began to develop a more sophisticated meeting system. We would never arrive together. We would always have a backup plan. We would always be prepared for the unexpected. Like in spy movies, I joked, but neither of us was laughing. This incident made us realize how fragile our happiness was. One wrong step, one accident, and everything could collapse. "Sometimes I wonder," Martin whispered, hugging me from behind. "What would have happened if we'd been caught then? Maybe it would have been even easier. We wouldn't have to hide anymore." "Do you really think so?" "No," he sighed. "I'm not ready. Not now." I understood him. There was too much at stake: his reputation, sports career, and relationship with the team. And I wasn't sure I was ready for such a public disclosure. We began to meet less often, but each meeting became more meaningful. Every moment together was precious. Every touch was exceptional. "Maybe it's for the best," I said one day. "It makes us stronger." "Or be careful," he added, kissing my neck. We have learned to be quieter, more attentive, and more careful. We have learned to notice the slightest sounds and anticipate possible dangers. But our feelings only grew. Every risk and every close challenge only strengthened our connection and made it more profound. "You know what?" Martin said after a particularly close moment. "Maybe all this complexity is a test of how serious we are about our feelings." "So, are we passing the test?" "Every day, it gets better and better." We continued to dream of a future without hiding, but now those dreams were more realistic and thoughtful. "After graduation," he said, "we'll do everything right, gradually, carefully, but honestly. The last weeks of the school year always have a special atmosphere, a mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and hope. For Martin and me, it was particularly meaningful. We were sitting on the roof, watching the sunset over campus. "I can't believe there are only a few weeks left," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "Before freedom," he smiled, kissing my head. "Before our true beginning." We had it all planned out. After graduation, Martin got an offer to work for a sports company in Seattle, not professional football, as his coach wanted, but a good job that would allow him to start a new life. I found a job teaching literature at a local college. "Can you imagine what it would be like?" he said dreamily. "Waking up together every morning, eating breakfast in our own kitchen, not being afraid of anyone seeing, walking around the city holding hands, invite friends over. True friends," I added, "the ones who accept us for who we are." He turned to me and said, "I'm grateful for this time, for everything we went through. Even for having to hide. Even for that, it taught us to appreciate every moment together, made us stronger." He was right. All these months of secret meetings, stolen kisses, and cautious glances created a special bond between us. We learned to understand each other without words, trust completely, and love no matter what. "Do you remember our first vow?" I asked, intertwining our fingers. "By the lake, in camp?" "Of course. We vowed to be best friends forever. Is it time to make a new vow?" He understood me without words. He took his penknife out of his pocket, the same one he had kept all these years. "Are you sure?" he asked, looking into my eyes. Like never before. We repeated the ritual of our childhood. linking our little fingers together, but now it meant much more. "I swear," he whispered, "to love you, to protect you, to be with you, no matter what." "I swear," I replied, "to believe in you, to support you, to love you, always." "You know," he said as we tied his scarf around our palms, "maybe one day we can make this official, for real. With rings and witnesses? And with a big cake," he smiled, "and dancing until the morning. And with our families? With all who accept our love." We were silent for a moment, watching the last rays of the sun paint the sky golden. "For now," I said, "we have this. Our moments, our vows. And soon our new life." He was right. There was so much ahead. Moving, setting up a shared home, and getting to know a new city. But the main thing was that we would do it together. "I love you," he whispered. "Ever since that summer at camp, even when we were apart, even when I tried to deny it." "I love you too," I replied. "I always have. I always will." The sun had finally set, and the first stars appeared. Somewhere below, the campus was living its own life, with its secrets, rules, and conventions. But here, on the roof under the starry sky, there were only the two of us, and our promise of eternal love. There was a whole life ahead, our common life, and we were ready for it.